The day my neighbor asked me for a life-changing favor was one of the craziest, yet most exciting days of my life. It was a warm, quiet afternoon, and I had just settled into my usual spot on the porch, a glass of iced tea sweating in my hand. That's when I noticed Alice, my neighbor of 3 years, crouched beside her garden, gloves clutched in one hand and a spade in the other. Her posture was tense, her slender shoulders hunched, as though gardening had become a burden rather than the solace she usually found in it. Alice and I weren't close, but we had the kind of relationship you'd expect from neighbors sharing a stretch of suburbia. We waved, chatted about the weather, and occasionally made small talk about our lawns. She'd helped me fix a broken gutter once, and I returned the favor by moving a stubborn piece of furniture into her garage. That was the extent of it until now. She stood abruptly, brushing dirt off her hands as her gaze drifted toward my house. For a moment, she hesitated, her dark eyes narrowing as if deciding whether to approach. Then, with a deep breath, she started crossing the lawn, her step slow and deliberate. "Hey, Riley," she called, her voice carrying over the late afternoon stillness. "Got a minute?" I set my glass on the table beside me, sensing this wasn't another casual chat about the neighborhood. "Sure," I replied, gesturing to the empty chair. "What's up?" Alice climbed the steps and sat heavily, elbows on her knees, staring out at the street, up close. She looked different, tired, almost vulnerable, unlike the confident, easygoing demeanor she usually projected. "I need your help," she said finally, her voice low, eyes fixed on a distant point beyond the hedges. Her words caught me off guard. Alice didn't seem like someone who needed help, especially not from me. She was self-assured, the kind of person who could handle anything. "Of course," I said, leaning forward. "What do you need?" she sighed, running a hand through her hair. "It's complicated, it's personal, and I need someone I can trust." The weight of her words settled between us, heavy and unspoken. I could feel her tension, the kind that came from holding something in too long. "You can trust me," I said, my voice steady. "Whatever it is, I'll do what I can." For the first time since sitting down, Alice looked at me, her eyes searching for reassurance. "Do you have time to talk now?" she asked. I nodded. "Take your time. I'm all ears." She nodded, her posture still rigid, silence stretched. But I didn't push. Sometimes people need space to find their words, and I was willing to wait. Finally, she leaned back, exhaling deeply. "Okay," she said, almost to herself, "let me start from the beginning." Alice spoke cautiously at first, testing the waters. She talked about her demanding job, the long hours and the stress seeping into her personal life. She mentioned her sister, Laura, and her 2 kids, struggling since Laura's divorce last year. Then she got to the heart of it. "I've been trying to help her as much as I can," she said, her voice quieter. "But it's hard. She doesn't want to accept help, not the way she needs to. And I'm worried about the boys. They're at an age where the stuff sticks with you." I nodded, understanding. "It's tough. Kids are resilient, but they need stability." "Exactly," Alice said, her tone more animated. "And I think they could use someone steady, someone who knows how to navigate tough situations." She paused, glancing at me. "I was wondering if you'd talk to her. You've always struck me as someone who's good at listening without judgment." I think she could use that. The request surprised me. I'd expected something practical, like borrowing a tool, not this. But as I thought about it, I realized how much it meant that Alice would ask me for something so personal. "I'd be happy to," I said firmly. "If you think it'll help, I'll do what I can." Relief softened the tension in her face. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with gratitude. "I can't tell you how much this means." She smiled, a small, genuine smile that lightened the air. "You're a good neighbor, Riley. Better than I deserve." "Hey, we're all just doing our best," I said with a shrug. "And you've always been there for me when I needed it." Alice chuckled softly, the sound carrying warmth. "Well, I guess that makes us even." The conversation shifted to easier topics, the tension easing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something bigger, not just for Alice and Laura, but for us. When she stood to leave, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows. "Thanks again," she said sincerely. "I'll let you know when I've talked to Laura." "Anytime," I replied, watching her return to her house, the door closing with a quiet click, leaving the night still once more. As I sat there, the cool evening air settling, I wondered what lay ahead. Alice's favor seemed small, but something told me it was the start of a larger story, one I was stepping into, ready or not. The next morning, Alice's request lingered in my mind, her vulnerability making it impossible to say no. I replayed our conversation, piecing together what led her to reach out. By mid-afternoon, I was back on the porch, sipping lemonade, the warm breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers. The neighborhood's quiet hum was comforting, but my thoughts kept drifting to Alice and Laura. I hadn't heard from her yet, but I figured she was working up the nerve to talk to her sister. It couldn't be easy asking for help and explaining to Laura she needed it. I hoped she'd follow through. The idea of meeting Laura, possibly making a difference, felt significant. Footsteps on the sidewalk pulled me back. Alice approached, her expression unreadable but her pace purposeful. She raised a hand in greeting, and I gestured her onto the porch. "Hey," she said, her voice mixing hesitation and resolve. "God. A minute, always," I replied, setting my glass down. "What's going on?" she said, leaning forward. "I talked to Laura," she said cautiously. She wasn't thrilled at first, but she's open to the idea. "She'll meet with you." "That's great," I said, relieved. "When does she want to do it?" "Tomorrow afternoon," Alice replied. "Would that work?" I nodded. "Absolutely. Just tell me where and when." She offered a small smile, still tense. "Thanks, Riley, really. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to," I said, brushing off her concern. "I'm happy to help." She nodded, standing. "I'll text you the details. I should get going. But thanks again." As she walked away, anticipation built inside me. Tomorrow, I'd meet Laura and hopefully help her. But more than that, I felt a deepening connection to Alice beyond neighborly kindness. The next day, I stood outside a small coffee shop, scanning for Laura. Alice had described her as petite with dark hair and a kind smile. I spotted her at a corner table by the window, hands wrapped around a coffee cup, staring at the street. "Laura?" I asked, offering a tentative smile. She looked up, guarded but polite. "You must be Riley," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Alice has told me a lot about you." "Hopefully good things," I said lightly. Sitting across from her, she smiled faintly, her eyes cautious, mostly. Silence hung briefly as we figured out how to start. I took the plunge. "Alice mentioned you've been going through a tough time. I'm here to listen, no judgment." Laura's shoulders relaxed slightly, and she sighed. "I appreciate that. It's been a lot, the divorce. Keeping things stable for the boys, figuring out what's next. Sometimes it feels like too much." I nodded. "It sounds like you've been carrying a lot on your own. But you don't have to. It's okay to lean on people." Her eyes softened, her walls coming down. "Alice means well. But sometimes she makes me feel like I'm failing." "I get that," I said. "She cares, but doesn't always know how to show it. That's where I come in to remind you that accepting help doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human." For the next hour, Laura opened up about her struggles, fears, and hopes. She talked about her boys, their adjustments, and her struggle to feel enough for them. I listened, offering encouragement but mostly letting her speak. By the end, she looked lighter, a weight lifted. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "I didn't realize how much I needed this." "Anytime," I replied. "You're not alone, Laura." She smiled, the expression reaching her eyes. "I'll try to remember that." Leaving the coffee shop, I felt a sense of accomplishment. Helping Laura was more fulfilling than I'd expected, and it deepened my connection to Alice. That evening, Alice stopped by, her expression a mix of curiosity and hope. "How'd it go?" she asked as I opened the door. "It went well," I said, letting her in. "She's amazing." Alice, stronger than she realizes. Relief washed over her. "I can't thank you enough. I knew she'd open up to you." "She's lucky to have you," I said, "and so am I." Alice's gaze lingered, an unspoken tension building. Silence stretched, and I realized I didn't want to ignore it. She lingered in the doorway, caught between gratitude and hesitation. I stepped back, gesturing her further inside. She took a cautious step, her gaze avoiding mine. "You've done so much already," she began quietly. "I don't want to take up more of your time." "You're not," I said firmly. "You're welcome here anytime." "Alice," she offered a faint smile, still holding back. "I didn't expect this to go so well." Laura seemed lighter when I talked to her, "and that's because of you. She's doing the hard work," I said, brushing off her praise. I just gave her space to breathe. Alice nodded, her hands fidgeting. "Still, it means a lot to both of us." The air grew heavy with something unspoken. I broke the silence. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Tea? Maybe something stronger?" "Water's fine," she said, following me to the kitchen. As I filled a glass, I felt her steady gaze. When I handed it to her, our fingers brushed, sending a jolt through me. Her eyes met mine, and the world narrowed to just us. "Riley," she whispered. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," I said, leaning against the counter. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated, running a hand through her hair. "Why did you say yes to helping Laura? You didn't have to." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "Because you asked," I said simply, "and because I could see how much it meant to you. Helping her and you felt right." Alice steadied me, her expression unreadable. "You're a good woman, Riley," she said finally. "Better than you realize." My cheeks warmed and I looked away, focusing on her glass. "I just try to do what I can," I said softly. "You do more than that," she said, stepping closer. You make people feel seen, heard, that's rare. I met her gaze, her vulnerability and intensity tightening my chest. I stayed silent, letting the moment stretch. She broke the tension with a small laugh, stepping back. Sorry. I didn't mean to get all serious. It's okay, I said, smiling to ease her embarrassment. Sometimes serious is good. She nodded, finishing her water and setting the glass down. I should get going, she said reluctantly. Thanks again, Riley, for everything. Anytime, I said, walking her to the door. You know where to find me, she smiled. Oh, yes, I know. And I will. As she left, something had shifted. Her words, her gaze, the way she lingered, it all felt loaded with meaning I couldn't name. I didn't want to ignore it. The next few days passed in a blur, Alice never far from my thoughts. I replayed our conversations, analyzing every glance, every word, searching for clues to her feelings. It was maddening but exhilarating, a reminder that life held surprises. Soon, Alice showed up again. Early evening, the sun setting, casting a warm glow. She stood on my porch, uncharacteristically unsure. Hey, I said, opening the door. Everything okay? Yeah, she said quickly, though her tone lacked conviction. I just needed to get out of the house. Mind if I join you? Not at all, I said, letting her in. We settled on the couch. The atmosphere charged but comfortable. We talked about nothing in particular: weather, work, neighborhood gossip, but an undercurrent of tension lingered. Finally, Alice leaned back, sighing. You know, she said quietly, I've been thinking about what you said, about not having to do everything alone, and, I prompted, my heart pounding. I think you're right, she admitted. But it's hard letting someone in, letting them see the parts that aren't perfect. Alice, I said gently, turning to face her, you don't have to be perfect. Sometimes the best connections come from showing the messy, vulnerable parts. She looked at me, open but hesitant. That's easier said than done, she said softly. I know, I said, but I'm here if you're ready to try. My words hung heavy, and she nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. Thanks, Riley, she said, her voice steady but emotional. That means more than you know. As the evening wore on, the tension eased, replaced by a quiet understanding. We didn't need to say more, the connection spoke for itself. Listening to Alice, watching her eyes light up, I realized this was the beginning of something far greater than either of us had imagined. The next morning, I reflected on our quiet moments, her softened voice, her searching eyes. They lingered in my mind. By mid-afternoon, I was tending my garden when Alice approached, hands in her pockets, a tentative smile on her face. Am I interrupting? She asked. Not at all, I replied, wiping my hands. What brings you by? She stepped closer. I figured I owed you a proper thank you for everything you've done for Laura and me. There's no need, I said, brushing off her gratitude. I'm happy to help. I know, she said, her voice softening. But I wanted to. Would you let me cook you dinner tonight? My way of showing appreciation. The offer surprised me, but her sincerity made it impossible to refuse. I like that, I said, smiling. Great, she said, her shoulders relaxing. 7, my place? Perfect, I replied, my heart racing. That evening, I stood outside Alice's door, a bottle of wine in hand, nervous energy buzzing through me. It was just dinner, but it felt weighty. Alice greeted me warmly, ushering me inside. The aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air, the table set with care, a vase of fresh flowers adding elegance. You went all out, I said, handing her the wine. I wanted to make it special, she admitted, pouring us each a glass. You deserve that. Her words warmed me, and I relaxed as we sat to eat. The food was delicious, but the conversation made the evening memorable. Alice opened up, sharing childhood stories, dreams and regrets. It's funny, she said, swirling her wine. I thought I had everything figured out, but lately it feels like I'm still finding myself. That's not bad, I said, meeting her gaze. Sometimes the journey is more important than the destination, she smiled, her eyes holding mine longer than necessary. You always know the right thing to say, she said softly. It's easy when it's the truth, I replied. The atmosphere shifted, heavy with something unspoken. Riley, Alice began, her voice low. There's something I've been wanting to say. What is it? I asked, my heart pounding. She hesitated. I've been holding back. I've been afraid to let anyone close. But with you, it feels different. Different how? I prompted, my voice barely a whisper, like I can be myself, she said simply, like I don't have to hide. Her honesty took my breath away. You don't have to hide with me, I said finally. I see you, Alice, and I'm not going anywhere. Her expression softened and she reached across the table, her hand brushing mine. The brief contact tightened my chest. Thank you, she said, her voice emotional, for everything. After dinner, we moved to the couch, our conversation flowing easily but with new depth. Alice shared more about her fears, hopes, and the moments that shaped her. I was drawn to her in a way I hadn't anticipated. At one point, she paused, gazing at the moonlight through the window. "You've made me realize something," she whispered. "What's that?" I asked, leaning closer. "That it's okay to want more," she said, turning to me. "To let myself feel again." Her words sent a shiver through me. I reached out, placing a hand on her arm. "You deserve that," I said softly. "You deserve to be happy." Her eyes held gratitude and longing. "So do you," she said, steadily. "And I think we can find that together." The world faded, leaving just us, slowly. I leaned in, my heart pounding. Alice met me halfway, and our lips met, soft and tentative at first, then deepening. A flood of emotion spilling over. Her hands found my waist, pulling me closer, and I melted into her embrace. When we pulled apart, our foreheads resting together. I smiled. "That felt right," I whispered. "It did," she agreed, her smile mirroring mine. More than I expected, the night stretched on and we stayed curled up, the quiet intimacy speaking volumes. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace, knowing we'd face whatever came next together.